Welcome
What about now?
to. You sound good. You sound
Okay,
good.
cool.
Welcome to the Deal Champs podcast.
check.
Mic check. Mic check.
Mic check. Mic check. We're live.
I am your co-host, Stratton Brown, aka Strat Daddy. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe. Ooh, I hit it early. Do not
look
forget
at that.
to hit like and subscribe. I'm happy. Bam. It's gonna be a great
Dang.
podcast.
This is gonna be fire.
We've scaled 2 different companies to 7 figures in 18 months. The 7-figure challenge went terribly. I did a whole recap with Lead Zolo on why it didn't go well. That'll be very, very interesting for new people. I think you should go after the bigger markets no matter what you do. Going after anything lower than $250,000 ARV is a recipe for disaster, in my opinion. But that's neither here nor there. And then we have a 7-figure real estate portfolio. We have the master of hair with the hair out today, Mr. Jason Pritchard.
Hair is out in the office today. Haven't been in the office for a pod in a little bit. I'm your other co-host, guys, Jason Pritchard. Backstory on me is I worked in corporate America for 15 years. Burned all the boats, went full-time into real estate in 2014, have not looked back since. We've flipped, wholesaled, and done close to 500 deals at this point. We've got a rental portfolio just north of 100 units, mainly here in Central California. And our goal, as always, with this pod is to try to transfer as many learning lessons to you guys that tune in with us every single week so you can learn from our mistakes and get to where you want to go as fast as possible.
We have the master of hair, Mr. Dean Rogers.
Master of hair.
Master of
today?
hair.
Man.
Captain America. I'm sorry. I mean, because
Thank
your hair
you.
looks crap
Thank you.
today. I think that's what threw me off. The hair looks like you just got out of bed. Those kids just beat your ass all day. And you're kind of like, you know what?
It
bro,
looks
we're here.
wild. I was thinking about it before the podcast. I'm like, do I need to put something in my hair today? Because like,
I say that as I'm wearing a bucket cap because I need to
yeah,
get a
you got
haircut.
the bucket cap, dude. We got to give you a hard time about that. I mean,
What do you
did you
mean?
just get done
hate
coaching the kids
America?
or something like that? No, I
You
love
hate America? You hate
No.
America. Is that what it is? You don't like the
No.
bucket cap?
I've just seen a lot of athletes with the bucket cap. So you just fit in the profile today.
Bro, I've been wearing bucket caps since 2010.
Wait, so you got American bucket cap on with the NFT?
Wait
24.
for it.
Wait,
Oh,
oh
man.
no!
Wow. Wow.
Whoa, wasn't
Full
ready
blown.
for that. I didn't.
I
I
went-
didn't think you had pants on. I was ready for it.
I was out of shorts, and these are my last pair of shorts because Kalani made me start doing my own laundry because I work out twice a day, and it's terrible. So I got to do. Jason, I guess, does his own laundry. It's a terrible thing. It takes so
Still.
I
much
do my
time.
own laundry too. Yeah. I always
So I'm out
have.
of laundry. These are the shorts I had left. I was like, if I'm going to do it, let's do it big. Let's do
That's
it
what
big.
college did for me. I learned how to do laundry, man.
Yeah, you're not wrong. Sorry, Captain America. Keep going.
Go ahead, introduce yourself, Captain America.
What's up, guys? Dean Rogers, your other co-host. Started my career in the NFL, then I transitioned to corporate, then I transitioned to real estate. Been investing in real estate for a decade now in Central California. We are very, very close to breaking 700 deals. Really excited about that. We've got 8-figure rental portfolio, coaching students how to get started in real estate with wholesaling. And you guys can always connect with me at deanrogers.com.
All right. Got all these tabs. The Obama internet's gone, by the way, boys. It's very convenient.
Is it just so? What's the update
Much
on
more
the
crispy today. I like
computer? You got no Obama internet. I mean, life.
It was all the
life's gonna look
computer,
better.
bro. It was all the computer. It was all. I mean, because I don't think my computer was strong enough to show how good the camera was. If you want me to be honest, because I got a pretty good camera.
Yeah,
And
I got a great
I think
story.
it's
Side note, because Shanae's always on here, and she's probably going to be on here soon if she isn't already. I got a great story that I shared with her because I knew she would appreciate it. I was driving the golf cart down the street through Pacific Beach. Okay, I was going to grab some food real quick, and as I'm driving, some girls riding some bikes yell, "Chris Pratt!" And I stopped and I looked back, and then I heard one of them say, "Yeah, that definitely looks like Chris Pratt." And I was laughing about
What
it.
a flex. Listen to this flex.
Dude,
Did you see the
so
whole
good.
story? I started in my golf cart down Pacific Beach, and then he gets mistake for Chris Pratt. Oh, my God.
By a bunch of chicks, not just by anybody. By a bunch of chicks
Oh
who
my
just
God.
watched me drive by, and then they screamed, "Oh my God, that's Chris Pratt!" And then Dean had to look back at him. So, I know.
How does this tie back to Shanae? Was it Shanae?
So I immediately get to my phone. I text my wife this, no response. I text Shanae this, thinking she'd appreciate it. And I told her, I said, some girls just yelled out Chris Pratt. And I should have said wrong movie. That's what I text her. And she's like, oh, I effing love it. And I was just like, I knew she'd love it. So yeah, that happened last week. It was pretty awesome.
So how was that ego stroke though?
Dude, it felt so good. Felt so good.
Good.
I was starting to look at my arms. I'm like, yeah, man, I guess I'm looking good today.
A solid booster for a couple weeks.
That's it. Straight to the gym after that, dude. It's like, well, let me go get a quick workout in. Yeah,
I just got done with the gym. That's why it happened. You know,
that's why the hair's messed up. That's why the hair's messed up.
Don't even need to do my hair anymore. You know, I just feel so good.
All right, today we're gonna cover how to deal with squatters in your properties. And I think this is a huge one. Most of your best money will be made with squatters in there. I feel like if you can negotiate and handle the situation right, because they don't know what to do. And then if you can just handle a cash for keys situation, you can negotiate right on both ends with the buyer and the seller. You can make some big rips. And I'd say odds are the people really just want some money to leave. There are times where you need to do evictions. Me and Cletus and Aaron are getting sued for a hefty sum right now because we had to deal with some squatters, but it is what it is. We'll start with Jason. I think you do the most flipping and you have dealt with the most since you self-manage with squatters.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to unpack with this. So let's start from the beginning and then we'll work through like all the fun stuff at the end on how you deal with it. Right. So I think the first thing, at least with us, when we get a deal that looks like we're taking it on with problematic tenants or squatters, it's how you negotiate the price initially. So I'm actually curious to hear what we do is we'll typically give the seller a couple different prices and we'll say, hey, if you deal with the tenants, you know, based on everything that you're talking about and you can deliver it to us vacant, you know, here's what we can pay you and it's X, right? If you're going to want us to take over that problem, we're more than willing to do it. We deal with it all the time, but because of legal fees, extra holding costs, all the different risk that's associated with it, you know, we'll buy the house next week from you, but the price is going to be Y. To make things easy, we typically have a $10,000 variance between those two prices, right?
Same.
And we just try to pad our numbers because for us in Fresno County and in California in general, eviction costs $2,500. You know what I mean? When you hire an attorney and you account for all the filing fees, something like that, right? So there's your legal fees is, let's call it $2,500. You've got the additional holding time, right? So if you buy it and depending on what you're paying for the property, you could have, you know, $2,000, $2,500 worth of holding costs on that property. And what would you guys say is a fair time to account for the most problematic person? Because you always got to go worst case scenario with this, right?
If
you got to say,
yikes,
we're going to buy it. We got to notice them. They're going to dig in the entire way, right? So we've got to do a full 60-day notice, then file the eviction, then let the time run out with court, then get a judgment, then wait for the sheriffs to show up. That's worst case scenario. I think 6 months right now in California. That's what we're seeing with our typical thing, right? So
I haven't had to deal with one in a while. I remember after COVID, they were backed up and like nothing was happening. And that was probably the scariest.
During that time, we had one go 13 months because they used all the outs they could during that time. It worked to our advantage because the market went up like crazy during that time. But man, that can wreck a deal with holding costs, with just everything that comes along with that. I mean, holding costs is what's eating up the most at that time. Attorney fees should relatively be the same, but yeah, I'd say worst case, I'd agree with you, Jason, probably 6 months.
And then you got to account for some potential like intentional damage that's done on the way out, right? Like if the person's that dug in and they're pissed, you know, I've seen crazy stuff. I've had squatters burn the house down, literally burn the house down, like while we were evicting them. I mean, that's like
Stratton has for sure.
So you could go all the way to that end, or they could rip out the wiring. They could pour concrete down the drain. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff they can do to try to sabotage the house. So I think first things first, we try to build a little buffer and we just present those two offers to the seller and we want to make them feel like, hey, do you want the easy button? Easy button's going to come with a little bit less money in your pocket, but we'll deal with all this headache. Or if you want to deal with it, we can pay you a little bit more. So we like to present it that way. I'm curious, Dean, do you guys do a similar approach, or when you get this that comes up, like how do you guys start that initial conversation with the seller, and how do you present your options?
Yeah, as I hear you say that, that's definitely the way that my mind goes about it. I am pretty sure that my team does it a little bit different, each person, which then like reiterates the point to me that like this is definitely something you need to train your team on and talk about these scenarios, right? So that gives me good ammunition to go back to our sales training tomorrow and talk about it. But a lot of times I'll hear my team when we listen back to our calls, and when we're in a scenario like this, usually with tenants, because tenants are the thing that are going to help, move the needle from a difficulty, from a pain thing, from an actual hard cost that's going to be associated with it. And usually the owners are just fed up. I mean, when we're using the term squatters, that's not just like a tenant that just missed 1 month's worth of payment. We're talking like people that are causing serious problem.
Yeah.
Usually by this point intentionally. And it's really frustrating and costing a lot of money. So we'll usually take a similar approach where it's like, hey, if the property was vacant, we'd be able to do more, but based on the fact that it needs this, it's going to cost X amount of dollars to do that, right? We'll kind of lay those things out. We need to be closer to this price. And naturally, we try to get them to have a number first and react to that, and then give them the rationale of this is going to take a lot more time. It's going to cost a lot more money. So we actually need to be at this price. So yeah, I'd say not too different. I'd say you probably are a little bit more structured with exactly how to present it, but we definitely account for about 10K, the same as you, and definitely make it a very big point as to why price needs to be at a certain thing. We deal with this problem all the time. I know you do too.
Yep.
This is going to be common. A lot of people that are going to sell their properties at a discount are going to be absentee owners that own a rental property, and there's going to be tenant problems. You're going to see it all the time. So squatters are not that uncommon. We've got a handful in escrow right now that have these problems, and it's just part of the game.
It is what it is, and I think the important part for those of you guys that are tuned in is our job is to solve these problems. So it's not something that you shy away from. I think if you want to have consistency and longevity in this business, you're constantly going to be up against things like this, and so you need to be okay both negotiating the deal, and then I think the next thing to talk about is like setting expectations on how to make this process as smooth as possible, because you don't want to just commit to buying it, then close on it and try to figure everything out as you go along, right? So game plan for us is once you get the seller to commit and say, okay, yeah, you know what, I just want to press the easy button and I'll take a little bit less cash here in order for you to take all of the headaches off of my plate. I think the next most important discussion that your acquisitions team or you, if you're the investor that's locking this up, is what are you going to do to kind of set the expectations with that seller so you can get the conversation going with the squatters while you're in escrow. I don't like to wait until after we close to try to go over there and knock on the door and do it. And so once we get a commitment from the price, just say, hey, great, perfect. Now, this is how it typically works when we work with sellers like you. We're going to want to go over there and make contact with the people living on there as soon as possible. And we're just going to take the approach that this is just a business for us, right? We're in contract to buy the house now. The seller has agreed to deal with it. We are going to eventually be the new owners. The current owner has given us permission to come over and talk to you. And we just want to work out something that makes sense for you and makes sense for us. And I think some people have that can be a hard pill to swallow, thinking about I'm going to pay the squatter to leave, right? And it's like, I'm going to give this person money to like move out of this house that I'm buying. And my thought process is, look, you're going to pay somebody something here, dude. You know what I mean? And you're going to pay your lawyer $2,500 and your private lender $2,000 a month while you're just slowly bleeding out, waiting for the eviction. Or you can put a couple grand in that squatter's pocket and they can be out of there in a couple weeks. And for me, the most important thing when it comes to negotiating the cash for keys is just mentally detaching from like, I'm paying this person to leave and this is just a business decision. What's the best decision for your business? And almost always it will be to get into that property sooner rather than later. And so you can save time and money just by doing that. So I always like to tell the sellers, once we get this in escrow, I want your verbal permission from us that our team can go over there and make contact right away. And our goal is to try to work something out with those people living there as soon as possible.
I wish I would have done the one where me and Aaron and Cletus are getting sued in escrow. I waited until after, and I used the Jason Pritchard line, like, hey guys, I honestly have no intentions of keeping you here. We bought this as a business. We're going to flip the house. We'd love to pay you guys to leave and help you guys relocate. And I got pretty much a fuck no. And I got the cops called on me, and this whole other rigmarole, and that's how that started, right? But I mean, sometimes people just won't take it. And then we even still paid them cash for keys, and then they came back and tried suing us later for $500,000.
Wow. And it gives you the opportunity, dude, if you do it in escrow, to go back to the seller, right? And be like,
I would have fucking dragged him down.
Yeah, like, hey, we went over there and this is a little bit worse than I think you made it out to appear, right? And so we'll still do this, right? But like, here's what we saw. We went over there, right? The worst, and I'm sure we're all going to get into our war stories here, dude, but there was this guy's house. His name was Larry. I bought Larry's house, dude. And Larry's house had the backyard. I'm not even joking, bro. It was a cross between Breaking Bad and The Walking Dead. If those two shows had a baby, and that's what was happening in the backyard of that
live zombies walking around the back.
Bro, it was the wildest thing I've ever seen in my life, dude. There was like 10 people living in the house. There was times 2 as many people living and coming just freely in the backyard. It was like it was just nuts, dude. And so had I had a better sense of what's going on, even though that deal ended up working and we bought it really deep, I probably would ask for an even deeper discount because it was just so much wildness going on over there. So you got to set the expectation to get over there and start that conversation before you close.
So I got a story to make a point about some of the best practices. So couldn't agree more. You have to start this during the escrow process because of the potential unknowns that could help you renegotiate if you need to. And think about, if you come to an agreement, what that helps you do is have a more solid deal, so that, let's say you're going to wholesale it, you already have terms agreed to.
That buyer takes on no risk.
That buyer has a lot less risky deal. And that gives a lot more comfort. A lot more buyers are going to raise their hand and want that deal. If you're going to buy it for yourself, you already have a lot more comfort of pretty much built-in saving money on the attorney fees, the holding costs, just your opportunity costs, everything that's going to be tied around your energy on that deal, you're going to help yourself out sooner. So to me, that's great. Now, to make another point to add on to it, a pro tip. Now, Dylan, one of my students, one of your students too, Jason, his first deal that he ever did had 2 properties, and it had squatters in one of the properties. Okay. Now, Dylan had come to me and had asked me, like, what do I do? And, I walked him through the whole cash for keys situation. But the point that I made to him is that you might not even need to give any cash. It might not be a cash thing, right? We don't want to approach it from the point of, hey, how much money do you need to leave, right? Right out the gate. From a strategic standpoint, you should approach it of, hey, I'm going to be the new owner. Or if you want to take another strategy approach and say, hey, I'm the property manager representing the owner, right? Removes you as the negotiator and as the bad guy. The owner's going to be purchasing this property, sent me down to see what's going on here and wanted to see what I could do to help you, right? Because we're going to be purchasing this property. We're going to be remodeling it, and we are going to need this property vacant as soon as possible. Is there anything you need help with? And then just pause. Don't say anything else. What that's going to do is create the opportunity for that person to say a handful of things. They could say, I just need a couple days. Perfect. That's an ideal situation. Right. I could be out by 5 o'clock. Literally, we've good.
This is a nugget. A good nugget right there. That right there will save you a lot of money. That question.
Save you a lot of money.
Yeah.
2, they could say, hey, I just need, help with moving. Could you help me with moving? Sure. Right. Maybe, and the scope of that move could be very limited. They just might need gas money, right? We've paid gas money. or paid for a U-Haul, paid a couple $100 for a U-Haul. They might need, you know, as I continue to go down the cost scale here, they might need help with hotel for a couple nights. They might need help with first month's rent, right? The scale will continue to go up in costs, and ultimately they might ask for an actual dollar amount. Hey, if I'm going to get out of here, I need $1,000. I need $2,000. I need $5,000. I need $10,000. I mean, it could get pretty wild.
How much have you paid?
How much have we paid? We've paid $5,000.
Our biggest cash for keys was 10 grand. Our biggest one. That was a few years ago. There's a lot of, this is a good one to talk about because it's like lots of mitigating circumstances, but go with your story and then we'll get back into like why we pay more or less or whatever. Cause you're on a good, topic right now.
Again, as we think about going through this process, and this should hold true for the way you even talk with sellers, right? We don't want to just jump straight to price. We want to take our time and work through negotiation. So when it comes to the cash for keys situation, we approach it from the standpoint of helping the person. What do they need help with? It could be as simple as I just need till the end of the day, or I need 24 hours, or I need a couple days, or I need help with X, Y, and Z. And it could be gas. It could be a U-Haul. It could be a couple nights in a hotel, or a dollar amount. If they want a dollar amount, okay, you have to ask yourself the question, is it worth it? Is it even worth, fighting them over? Now that's negotiable as well. And naturally, if they say a dollar amount, $1,000, $1,000, what do you need $1,000 for? I mean, do you just need help with moving? I mean, what is it you need help with? And focus on what they need help with. You might even be able to get them to negotiate themselves down. I'll do it for $500. At the end of the day, if it comes to a dollar amount that's high, we're talking in the thousands amount, the thing you come back to is to say, well, hey, look, I totally appreciate that. Sounds like you need some help with, a couple different things. But if I go back to the team and I tell the owner, hey, you want $2,500, they're going to say, forget about it. They're going to throw their hands up and say, hey, just start the eviction process. And man, I hate doing that. It's not something I like to do. It's not fun. I don't like working with attorneys. It messes up your ability to rent the next place you're going to be looking at. So I'd rather just help you. I mean, what can I do to help you? And it just comes back to the help. Ultimately, if you can get them to do it for as least amount of money, that's the goal. And if they're just going to kick and scream and dig their feet in, then obviously the eviction's a route. But if it comes to the point at the very end where you have to bring up I'd rather, if I go back to the team, it's going to move to, hey, just do an eviction. Then you just make the point. It would cost an attorney about that much. So the team would probably just rather start the eviction because they know that'll get done. But what can I go back to them with so that we can move forward? And that's our approach. And to me, that's highly effective. Dylan, on that first deal, guess what? Those people just needed to the end of the day. And guess what? They didn't want to cause any problems because they were convicted felons. Okay. So a lot of the times, if you just approach from help, you'll be pleasantly surprised. People need little to no money. They need little to no help. They just need some time, and it can work out to really help you.
I think going in and trying to big time them like you're the big bad investor and like I'm the new sheriff in town is probably the worst approach that you can take. I always try to take the neutral approach. And it's just like, hey, I get that there's probably some drama between you and the old owner. Frankly, all that stuff is like water under the bridge to me. I want to hear what we can do to try to work something out with you. And everything else that Dean said is what's always worked best for us. And always painting the picture, just saying, not to like repeat everything that you said, but just letting them know there is no option that involves you staying in this house. And I like to repeat that, right? Like here are the options that we have. it's either I'm going to pay you or pay the attorney. What option we don't have is you staying in this house long-term, right? So I can either give you a check that helps you walk away and like transition to whatever the next chapter of your life is going to be, or I'm going to give that check to the attorney and the sheriff's going to come knock on the door and you guys can sort it out with them. You know what I'm saying? And most investors, frankly, will take the ease option. I'm here to just see if we can sort something out ourselves. So letting them know that staying there isn't on the table, man. But yeah,
I think one thing, if you're a new investor, we've put our cash for keys on our buyer too. We did all the negotiation and then we just told the buyer, here's what it needs to be. So we didn't even like put any money into it for you new investors. Like, man, I don't have X amount of dollars to give into to this random person to make sure this goes through. We've negotiated everything and then met with the buyer. The buyer was like, nope, I'm cool with it. Me, the buyer, and the tenants were all right there in front of the house. We got it done. They left. We were good to go. But that's what it had to be if you are wholesaling it, because not all the time you may not want to like shell out the cash. Right?
And from a legality standpoint, you're not really the owner. So if they sign the agreement with you as the assignee, right, and then the new buyer closes, you pay that person, and then they just decide to say, screw it, I'm coming back. The agreement is with the wrong two parties, right? And so if like you try to have that enforced with like police department or law enforcement, if they're sticklers, they, that may not hold up, right? So you just want to make sure that if you're assigning it, your bases are covered. And you bring up a really good point. Like I would also say, if your plan is to assign it, does that 10,000 buffer give you enough, Dean, or do you think you need a little bit more meat on it? Just because typically, like with squatter occupied stuff, you're probably getting beat up more on your price, right? It's like the very first thing that a buyer goes to. It's like, well, I'll take it, but I need it here. You know what I mean?
Typically when we're pricing out what wholesale price it's going to be, we usually subtract 10K. I mean, that's usually the number. So I would say if it's in a major city, it's not on the outskirts in the middle of Timbuktu, usually that does the right number. 10K. So we're not usually getting beat up on it unless we miss the mark on repair costs or ARV. Like that would be
just a huge mess or something. It's crazy circumstance going on over there. Yeah. So then what? We close on it or get it closed. Let's just assume we're closing on it, right? We like to have that conversation at least started while we're in escrow. The way that we do like the actual approach with the offer with the squatters that we're negotiating is we do a stair stepper with the money that we get them, right? So if they agree to leave in the fastest amount of time as possible, that's when they're going to get the most money in their pocket. And then it's like a sliding scale down, right? So like for every week that you need to stay in there, right, you're going to get less and less. And then if it goes anything beyond really 30 days, there really isn't a point then at that point. And you have to be really careful if you try to agree to some like long extended 30 to 60 day cash for keys agreement, because this is where it will really come back and bite you in the ass. Let's say you do something longer. And then I've had this actually happen to me a couple times where it's like, all right, yeah, we'll give you cash for keys. We'll give you X amount of dollars. We'll give you 30, 45 days. And then that 45 days comes up and then they're like, well, nope, sorry, I'm not going anywhere. You're still going to have to evict me. And if you don't serve them the notice at the beginning, right? Like if you don't concurrently serve this 60-day notice and have the cash for keys discussion done at the same time, then you're waiting whatever period you gave them. And then you just gave yourself, another 30 or 45 days of lead time before you did it, right? So it's just going to extend everything out. So what we like to do is when we close, we serve them with all the legal notices right up front. And we're very clear, like, hey, this doesn't mean you get 60 days for cash for keys. This is me covering my bases in case option A over here, cash for keys, doesn't work with us, right? So there's not going to be any extended time. No matter what, we're starting the clock here on you getting out. And this will be ripped up after you sign and we pay you this and everybody leaves, right? And then that way we do it that way. So I think you've got to do that. And we'll probably I think we're starting out, like if we can't get them to come with a number or they want us to propose a number, I think we'll probably start in the 1,000 or 1,500 range. And then we do that stair stepper down, right? So if you can get out of here in a week, this is when you're going to get 1,500. If it's 2 weeks, it's 1,000. If it's 3 weeks or more, it's $500. And then you go from there. Yeah. And I think you said a lot of good stuff, Dean. Like a lot of times it's not just the money. It's like, can we get, $50 a night for a hotel room for a couple of days just to go over, dude. It's like small stuff, like letting them know, like, leave all your stuff, dude. Like, I don't care. Like, leave all your stuff. You don't need to do anything, like, whatever. Like, try to throw in some additional terms to make it a little bit more conducive to them leaving. Don't make it just about the money. Don't ratchet up the dollar amount. The dollar amount shouldn't be the only thing that goes up.
Totally.
I fucking hate squatters, bro. I hate them.
I got a question in my IG. Is this same process you would do with a current tenant that hasn't paid rent in months? So are you guys, like, let's say it isn't a quote unquote squatter, right? Like somebody that actually like just forced their way into the house and got into a vacant property and now is like squatting in it. Do you approach the same thing, Dean, with tenants? Like if it's a tenant that just hasn't paid and they haven't started an eviction, is it the same?
Yeah, that's a great question. So to me, it's exactly the same process. It probably just looks and feels a little different because naturally with a squatter, it's just the mind. We're using the term squatter because of the mindset and the intent of the person. Usually a person that's squatting is intentionally living there, not paying rent. They're not willing to, they're never going to, and they feel entitled about it. A tenant who's usually a month or a couple months behind rent could be going down that road. Chances are they just fell on hard times or they're going through something, which could include a disagreement with the owner too, right? That can largely be a part of it. So we will certainly take the same approach, but I think just going back to the earlier point about focusing on how to help them, usually it's just about that. It usually comes down even more about just helping the person. Could be first and last month's rent at the next place they're going to. It could just be that they were frustrated or they had hard times, and they knew the time was coming, right? We've had that happen with tenants that are a couple months behind rent. We contact them. The owner either did or didn't do a good job trying to communicate with the tenant, and that's usually where things fall apart. And just the mere fact that we are making contact with them, we are communicating with them, are trying to help them, just helps kind of alleviate the stress and the frustration and moves it forward. So yeah, we definitely take the same approach, and it's the emphasis that in the point you made, Jason, you definitely have to do that notice right away because it just makes it official and it helps protect you if you do have to end up going down the eviction route.
Hire a lawyer to do that stuff, guys. I think I've gotten burned by downloading notices off the internet and just trying to go the cheap route and serve it myself. And if the notice isn't served properly or it's outdated information, it doesn't include the new, if you're in California, new rent control disclosure, all these things, right? That a little bit of money that you invest on the front end just to get your paperwork right, to get the service right, because you can get the eviction delayed because it wasn't served properly or the paperwork was off, right? All of that creates delays. So I've done the DIY approach to this. I've also got burned by,
never do the DIY approach. That's another
not when it comes to legal stuff, guys. Just use the right paperwork and get it all squared away and then go from there.
Make sure you get a good eviction attorney though.
Yeah.
We dealt
if you
with
guys are in Fresno,
you
you can DM any of us. I'm sure, Dean, you guys have stuff. Most of your stuff, I think, is probably Visalia, Tulare County. I'm sure you guys have somebody you like up there. Our guy probably goes out there and does it too. So whatever. If you guys need referrals, reach out to one of us, shoot us a DM, and we can send you.
We've used the same guy as you, and we've used it in Fresno. We've used it at the Central. We've used him at the Central Coast.
Yeah.
So he's pretty good generally.
Yeah. So what about, so now let's just assume we've talked to him. We've got a tentative agreement. Let's talk through now that we've got this, right? Now you can kind of see the light at the end of the tunnel, but there's still some work here left to do, right? And so what's your guys' process, Dean, like once we've had that initial conversation? And I'm also curious to see about how many, like just a percentage of the squatters or the non-paying tenants that you have this conversation with, how many of them after that discussion end up taking cash for keys versus the ones that just dig in and go with eviction? And then what do you guys do after to make sure, they actually stick with it and that they actually leave when they're supposed to?
I'd say percentage wise, I'd say probably 70 to 80% of them follow through with the actual agreement that we have. And then there'll be that, 1 to 3 out of 10 that will just say, to hell with it, screw it, I can't find my next place, had no intent from the get-go, right? Or they were just really shaky on everything. So
what about from the initial conversation? How many people are you guys actually convincing? Because I think that's even the more important question, right?
Okay.
I think most time people go, and I've had a great success rate. I bet you guys have too, of like most people will actually take the money, dude. And these deals end up being some of our better deals because we get it at the right price because of the problems. And the cash for keys ends up being $1,500 and then they're out of there in a couple weeks. So how many of those do you successfully negotiate, like percentage wise?
I don't have an exact number, but I would definitely say it's above 50%. And I would say
ours
it's
is
probably
a little bit higher than that too.
60 to 70%. And then just to follow through with what I thought I was answering is the people that do agree to move forward, I'd say, again, 80% or so will actually follow through. There'll be some that fall out and they end up digging their heels in and it doesn't go through. But yeah, I'd say about that much. And then our process, because you were talking about the process, what does that look like? Communication at that point is so important. You've got to have continuous check-ins. I think some people will come to an agreement on something like that and consider it done. I mean, you're dealing with people that are already in this situation. They have characteristic traits that will lead you to believe that they're not good at following the rules or, following a process from the get-go. So you got to have really good communication. You got to be checking in with them and making sure that they're still meeting the timeline. And if they're not, you got to start talking about what are the repercussions if they don't, right? And that's why, again, to the earlier point, the notice that you file at the beginning, the 30-day or 60-day notice in California, is really important because they might start to get a little shifty, and we've definitely had that happen.
So you get them, you're there at the 50% mark. Who didn't take them? You just proceed with your eviction. We at a point, Cletus wanted to be nice to the people and still pay them to leave because Cletus has such a big heart, and I want to stab him. Like, fuck those people. And like, we paid them to leave just to get a $500,000 lawsuit in 3 months. Like, oh my God. So like at that point, you just follow through with your eviction no matter what, even if they do come to you like, hey, I'm sorry, I was a shithead.
I mean, it does reach a point where like the ship has left the state, the train's left the station, and it's like, here, this is it, it's done. And I've already paid the attorney. It's like, I'm here. So there is, I think, a line that you do need to draw. Again, anything is negotiable at this point because all I care about is getting into the property sooner. So if we can make the numbers work and I just give them less money, even if I paid the attorney, and they'll leave in, 30 days instead of waiting for, because you got to figure the attorney's got to file it. Then you're in the queue for the eviction. Then you got to go in front of the judge. Then, the judge is either going to grant you a judgment or he's not. Let's say you get the judgment. Then it's got to go to the sheriff, and the sheriff's got like a 30-day backlog, right? So it's like you're out months waiting for this stuff, dude. And every one of those months, it's more damage, more holding costs, all that stuff. So you just have to do the math on how expensive is it for you to hold all of this, right? And
that exact scenario just happened to us. We have a property we bought for $200,000. Okay. Had a guy in there that had just stopped paying rent. Reasonable guy, nice guy. My partner Lewis had, good conversation with him, gave him a sliding scale, just like you talked about, Jason. Presented him with his options, and he wasn't doing anything. He stopped responding. So we started the eviction process. Okay. Then he ends up coming back around, gets back in contact with us, and we ended up doing cash for keys and coming to an agreement. We paid him $3,000 to get out, and it just he wasn't going to get out for any less because he just didn't have anything. And that was the unfortunate situation. He needed money for his next month's rent. We tried to get him into one of our properties with our property manager. Our property manager ran his credit, looked at all his history, and it was terrible.
You're wild. Why would you try and do it? What the fuck is wrong with you?
Well, the order of the way I presented that was out of order. We checked with our property manager from the get-go. We checked with our property manager from the get-go, and he said he had bad credit, and so and a bad rental history. So that took that one out of the options. But we ended up doing cash for keys, and as soon as we got a vacant, we put it on the market as is for $249 and sold it instantly. So at the end of the day, after realtor fees and everything, we'll make $235 to whatever, make 35 grand on it. And it made sense to get them out and just get that done.
Yep. Never pay the cash. I don't know. This seems to make sense for me, but I know the squatters will push for this. And I've had some investors reach out to me and just say, hey, do I pay them when they sign the agreement? And the obvious answer I thought was obvious is hell no. They pay them, and it should state very clearly in your cash for keys agreement that the only time that money is handed over is in exchange for you relinquishing. And I'm very clear about this. You're relinquishing all rights that you have to this house. And I say, well, you signing this paper means that if you ever come back here after this and I've given you payment and you've given me keys, I'm calling law enforcement immediately. And I'm just going to say, hey, this is the agreement that they signed. And you're basically relinquishing everything, right? So just trying to paint a clear picture that they can't come back. But that money, and we never give actual cash. And you guys probably get this too. I know we do. The squatters want actual cash money, and you never do that because there's no paper trail, right? So what we always tell them is it's always certified funds. That's as good as cash, right? So it's a cashier's check or a money order. We have, lots of times the reason why they push back is they don't have bank accounts or they don't have an ID or both, right? So you may want to network, and we've networked with a few check cashing places that are local that, are like, hey, dude, we've had a couple of your guys come in and do this. I've had the owners call me actually because they've wanted to confirm that it was a real cashier's check, right? So the owner of the liquor store, the check cashing place will call me and I'll be like, yeah, it's good. And then they do it. And then they'll call me back and say, hey, if you have any other people like this, send them over here. You know what I mean? And so having a couple of those people in your place, but never give them actual cash because you need a paper trail that you actually paid them the money. And that money doesn't get handed over until you get keys. And you need to have either your handyman or your contractor or somebody right there with you. So as soon as they're getting keys, they see the house getting boarded up. Your trash haul guy should be there with you too. So then all the stuff that's there, there should be no reason for them to come back. So if you throw away all the remaining junk and then it's boarded and they see that happening, while you're giving them the money, it usually paints the right picture.
So Shanae in my comments said, are you Captain America or Jesus? With the whole giving him the ability to rent one of my properties after all that stuff. So again, the order we started with
Mother Teresa. Mother Teresa is the new nickname, bro. Mother Teresa. Just a loving soul.
My standard response to that question, because we get that question too, is we don't have any vacancies right now, unfortunately. That's it. Just don't leave yourself open to any of that headache and right there, because you don't want to. You need two options. That's it. The more options you get, the muddier it's going to be. It's it's the lawyer gets the money or you get the money. Those are the two options. That's the only thing.
Oh my goodness. I'm trying to, what else could go wrong because there's bad tenants. Because Jason, you just get rid of any tenant occupied house, right? You're like, hey, I bought the house. You're in here. I'm just going to give you some cash to leave. I don't want to say 100% of the time. We bought stuff that I've really liked as rentals, and the property was okay. And most people aren't buying rentals, though, I would say. Most people,
but if you're buying it and it's a problematic person, I can't think of one scenario, and we bought lots of these over the years, where there's ever been any type of interaction that goes beyond them leaving or them getting evicted. It just creates too much
non-problematic. You just bought it with tenants in place, but the deal made sense. But the tenants are good.
We've had some interesting scenarios, not to take it off on too big of a tangent, but we had a scenario where owner wanted to sell his property. The person living in the property was the son. He wasn't paying rent, wasn't doing anything. The dad was frustrated, said, I'm done with this. I'm selling it. Now, we found out while we were in escrow by talking to the son that he actually wanted to buy the property. He didn't want to move. And so we realized we had two options. We could either go through the eviction process, try to get him out, or we could just go ahead and try to sell it to him. So we went ahead and got him qualified to see if he could buy the house. We ended up being able to sell the house. We ended up making like $80,000 on the deal by just selling it to the son, and worked out really, really well for us. So there can be some very interesting scenarios. That's why it's important to get over there, go talk to the person. Don't wait until the property closes to try to figure it out, because it could either make the deal more sticky, or you could realize that you have an even better deal than you thought, and you just completely overlooked it. So talk to the person, see what you can do. Now, let's talk about if the person, okay.
I think Jason should get his prostate checked with all these bathroom breaks that he's taking for the guests. they see him like
he's over I didn't want anybody to walk off with my food, so I was like, "Is this delivered?" Because I haven't eaten all day long, so I wanted to go snag it before it got.
Yeah. So another to kind of wrap up the situation with dealing with squatters. So you get the agreement signed. Okay, let's say you're moving forward with it. What are the repercussions or consequences, or what can you do to reinforce the cash for keys agreement if the person doesn't get out, right? Because again,
I've never been there.
The agreement says, here's a dollar amount. You're relinquishing all your rights to the house. You're walking away from it by a certain date, right? So let's say you come to the date, the person's not ready, and there's a lot of different variations that we could go. They're not willing and able to move, right? They're not going to. They need more time, and they legitimately do. Or some other version. So let's say they're not ready to get out, or they're not going to get out. What can you do to reinforce the cash for keys agreement?
There's no money exchanged. And so I've never been in the situation where we've tried to legally enforce it. The legal enforcement looks and feels like, to me, just following through with the eviction. That's why serving that notice on the front end is the way to go. So I have had situations where they're just like, because of all the things that you just listed, they're not leaving for one reason or another. And then, that's why you don't want to let this period extend too long, right? So it's only, we're not talking about months, it's weeks, literally, guys. It's like 2 to 3 weeks max is what you want to do. Yeah. So to me, I would just enforce the eviction. I have had them try to go back after accepting the cash and then boarding it up. And that's why we're very clear. Like, I make sure we say multiple times, and especially on the day that we're doing the actual exchange for keys for money, like, listen, do you understand? This is what you're agreeing to, right? So if you come back over here, we're going to trespass you, and I'm going to, like, I just try to paint the picture of like how problematic it could be getting law enforcement involved in doing that. You've waived your rights. And I've been lucky the few times where it has happened, like whoever PD or whoever is the law enforcement agency has come over and they're like, cool, you've got this. And they're like, you got to go. So I've gotten backed up. I haven't had a situation where, the law enforcement officer has called into question the agreement or said, hey, this isn't valid or whatever. So I think, the handful of times it's worked in our favor, but it's just about setting expectations. I feel like paint the picture. There's no screwing around, and you're like, you have to be gone. And for the most part, they'll just be gone. Cause I don't think they want problems either you know what I mean? Like if they're squatting and they're kind of walking that gray area between all this stuff, they probably got other issues in their life, dude. They don't want the cops crawling all over us, so it's bad for them and bad for you.
I would say one thing that I have learned, squatters and hoarders always need significantly more time than they will agree to with you. Like, so if a squatter has like a bunch of stuff in there and they say they can get X done in X amount of time, and you look in there, every time I'm like, they're not going to be out of here by then.
Yep.
Odds are they're not going to be out of there by then. I've seen it time and time again. And so I'd tell you just to be prepared for those situations. Or it's like, hey, are you really sure you can get this done? Like, do you have like the support to get this done? Like all these questions, because they will legitimately dig their head into the sand and then come to you the day before closing and say, or whatever they're supposed to get out, like, hey, I can't fucking do it. I need more time, blah, blah, blah.
Yep.
And I've seen it multiple times. It's happened to us.
You need to be checking in multiple times a week and probably putting eyeballs at least once a week, especially if you're giving them only 2 or 3 weeks and maybe more. Like the week of the actual cash for keys happening, you or somebody from your team probably needs to be there 2-3 days before and checking in by phone and just saying like, hey, dude, this place looks about the same as it did when we first met. Like, are you sure? Right? Like, I don't need you to leave this stuff, but I just want to make sure you're going to be out of here because our agreement says this. And if you wait any longer, I'm going to have to reduce the amount based on the way that the agreement is set up. And so just setting those expectations, man, I think is the most important thing. I got another comment here saying this is a great topic. I'm new to investing and was told by multiple people to stay away from problem properties, tenant occupied properties. This gave me a different perspective on them. Thanks for the information, guys. I think some of these like squatter occupied or problem tenant occupied properties, they've been our best deals, literally financially our best deals. They also, another reason why you don't want to shy away from them, guys, is you want to lean into gaining this experience. Like this is going to be something that's going to come up. So there's value in not just the deal, but there's also value in you learning how to navigate all this stuff. So yeah, I don't think you should shy away from it. Just make sure you're buying it right for sure.
Buy it right. I mean, that's one of the best comments we've gotten. I love that. Buy it right. Yep. You'll be good, because those sellers they don't want to deal with that. And a lot of it's like, they don't want to deal with the energy, the negative energy. Like, being a landlord with crazy tenants is crazy. One of our friends got his like office lit on fire by one of the tenants. They didn't know who it was. And so like that landlord doesn't want any part of that.
Yeah. And I would also, so you got to be careful. Like when you go over to these situations, we didn't really talk about that, but like you as the investor, or especially if you're sending your team over there, like you have to be mindful of your environment. You have to be mindful of the people that are over there. I would not just walk into some random house when there's a bunch of people that are there and you don't have like a clear exit. I would have these conversations outside in the front yard. Like you need to just be very mindful of your surroundings and don't put yourself in a hairy spot, dude. Cause I've been in a couple kind of super sketch situations over the years. And so you just got to be really careful with that type of stuff too.
Totally.
All right, boys. Guys, do not forget to hit like and subscribe. We have the saint of America, Mother Teresa, Dean Rogers, with us. The man who's 40-something, reverse aging, but he needs to get his prostate checked. The master of hair, Mr. Jason Pritchard. I am Strat Daddy. We'll see you guys all next week. Wait, are we dialed in on that meetup? Are we stuck on that meetup? Should we announce that right now?
We have one in early November in Fresno.
Right.
We don't have the exact date, but we're close to locking it in. So, yeah.
All right,
it won't be on election day. We know that.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in.
Later, guys.
Peace.